This week, it's my past, present, and future. We're looking for Parmak in all the wrong places. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this blank screen that is...
I thought it did it automatically. I don't know what I was thinking.
No, it didn't. It didn't. What is this? This is Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Today we're talking about Season 5, Episode 3, Looking for Parmak in all the wrong places. I'm in a new place. It is still our old faces. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Keith. You are up in the zone of totality. You saw all of the cool stuff. We thought it was cool enough here where I just saw the sliver and the glasses worked, because the last time I did the whole eclipse thing, we had to use the box and the shadows and the... So this was cool, and it was exciting, and it was not cloudy for about 11 minutes, so we saw enough to say we saw it. But then Keith started sending his pictures, folks, and let me tell you, maybe we'll check it out on Geekly coming up, but it was awesome. It was cool experience.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I was talking with another friend of mine who was up here and realizing that, I was sort of expecting this not to live up to the hype. I didn't travel for this intentionally. I'm house sitting for my folks, which is why you'll I'm in a different location, undisclosed location in Vermont. So I was like, oh yeah, it'll be cool. I'll go up there and see what that's all about. But let me tell you, boy, did it live up to the hype in real life. I was it was genuinely breathtaking. And most people, when you use that word, you don't really mean it. This time it really, really was. And I think the number one takeaway for me was, we're up in Vermont, so we had 18 inches of snow last week. So we were it was warm, but we were, sitting in a snowbank or whatever. And the temperature difference,
we got that
when
too.
It crossed over, it was unbelievable. And spoiler alert, we don't want to lose the sun.
Yeah, sounds cool. It's hot, but cool.
Yeah. Well, we're going to die very quickly if we don't have the sun. So, anyway.
Well, it's space related, Keith, and this is Deep Space Nine, so I feel like it's an okay chat. The thing that I thought was really kind of neat was, so we knew we weren't getting the full totality, so we weren't getting the whole, ring and then the diamond ring and the thing and then take the glasses off for a few minutes. So I had my iPad with me, and I had NASA's live stream on, where they were going across the zone of totality. Every time was a new place, and they had a team there to look at it. And they were up in Burlington, and they were up in, this one killed me.
They were, cool.
They were up in Tupper Lake, which is about a 11-minute drive from our cabin upstate. So I was like, oh,
you should have gone.
Yeah, and it was incredible. But the point is that these NASA anchors, who are, some of the most intelligent people, subject matter experts that there are.
Right.
And generally,
they've seen it all.
Yeah,
they've done
when they're
it all.
doing a launch or whatnot, they have all the details, the technical stuff. They're just great educators. Not here. It was just, oh my God, oh, look at it. It's just drooling over themselves. So Jen and I spent the whole evening talking about, okay, maybe we're going to Mallorca, Spain in 2026 for a visit, because that's where the totality will be. And we're seriously considering it. So there you have it.
Yeah, well, careful. I think the hotels might already be booked, but...
Yeah, the tours are very expensive. Quick side note, Keith, little housekeeping beforehand. Just wanted to give a quick shout out, thank you to those who kind of were messaging over on the Patreon, which you can join at patreon.com/KNM. My mom had a tumble. She's doing all right. When when your parents get a little bit older, okay and all right is sort of graded on a scale.
Yeah.
It's graded on a curve. So, but she's hanging in there, and appreciate everybody's well wishes. So,
yes, yeah, no, for sure. To Rita, folks. All right, so let us talk about last week's episode and get your feedback, the viewers here of this show, for the ship. And if you want me to read your comment, Mike, there are two special, delicious ways for me to read your comment. Mike, what would those be?
Well, Keith, if you're a patron, which you can join at patreon.com/K, the letter, and M, the letter.
Yeah.
You get a whole bunch of fun stuff. You generally get to watch me watch the show live, but also if you have insightful commentary, like our good friends do, we'll read it here on the air. In fact, I want to, hopefully you have it drawn up, but Anne had a great comment for this last week.
Yes, I do.
That?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, for sure. We have lots of thoughts and feelings. Or the other way,
yes,
of course.
The other way, of course. If you're not a patron and you still want to help us out and get your voice heard, obviously you can just engage in the YouTube chat with all the other friends. But if you want to hear us talk about it on air, super tip, baby. I don't know where that money goes.
You do it.
But it goes somewhere.
Go somewhere. Yep. Sometimes it takes the money. Sometimes we get part of it. All right, so here is what you said. Joshua Cronin says, I enjoyed this episode. Like you said, it feels like a filler episode, but does have sustenance for later down the road. Vorta are cool, they are conniving like Romulans, and I enjoy that about the two aliens. As with Weyoun, probably up there in my favorite of that species as well, her performance in this. I give it 86 self-sealing stem bolts. Jason Moe says, I will try to close Keith's mini wormhole about the vanishing earrings. A lot of people commented on this. I was just flat wrong. They were there, I just couldn't see them, but I like Jason's closing of the wormhole much better than just I was wrong. He says earrings with tiny built-in cloaking devices were all the rage on the Vorta homeworld. Love it. He continues, on Paramount Plus, the description for this episode reads, Sisko, Dax, O'Brien, Worf, and Muniz discover wreckage of a crashed Jem'Hadar ship, as if we're all supposed to know who Muniz is. This would be an episode description for Next Gen stating, Picard, Riker, Data, and Lieutenant Bobby Johnson beamed down to a hostile world. Someone just seems very out of place there and is clearly doomed to die. This Deep Space Nine episode is actually not as good as I remembered. Some clunky dialogue here and there, especially between O'Brien and Muniz. The lesson about communication at the end feels a little bit after school special. I also feel like Worf is somewhat out of character here in his harsh attitude about Muniz's impending death. I could see Next Gen Season 1 Worf acting that way, but this Worf served under Picard for 7 years, served under Sisko for over a year, so I find it a bit hard to believe that he would project such a seemingly fatalistic and uncaring attitude about a wounded crewmate. Granted, Worf is technically right about the outcome, but I feel he would know by now to keep some truths to himself in that type of situation and be a bit more diplomatic in front of the other officers. I agree with you, although I would say that perhaps Worf is feeling a little bit squirrely about his Klingon-ness lately, having been sort of, being thrown out once again, going and, being outcast from being a Klingon. He's always had that, but especially, maybe he's just feeling he wants to push a little extra Klingon in that moment. That would be my
He gets to push some Klingon this week.
He sure does. Yeah, he does. The last scene of this episode is outstanding, though, and I was surprised to hear Keith say that it wasn't part of the original script. 84 stem bolts. YouTube viewer has some good news for you, Mike. Says Mike's version of the Macarena was surprisingly good. Well done. Hope you warmed up. Hope you stretched before this episode. I like your well-intentioned white people comment. It was spot on. They never seem to have a problem with Keiko being Japanese or Miles being Scottish, although he's Irish, but Star Trek handles Latinos badly. Though they are even worse with the French. Jean-Luc Picard is the most British Frenchman ever. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever put that together. It's awesome, actually.
It's utterly
so
ridiculous.
Bad, it's great. And he's always like at a winery, just like hanging out. Like when we flash
at his own winery. Yeah. His family owns a winery, and they talk like this. Anyway, other than Coco, continuing the idea of how you portray Latinos, other than Coco, I cannot come up with a good representation of Latino culture made by a United States media company. I saw the watch along with Mike, and I remember that when I first saw this episode, it blew me away, but on rewatches, it's kind of meh. I realize that this is a pretty good episode highlighting the human cost of war, and it characterizes the Vorta well. Your explanation for why the Vorta tried to flirt with Sisko makes sense. Before your explanation, I thought the scene was dumb since Vorta are cloned and would therefore be non-sexual beings. I think cloned people can be horny. I don't know, but I see your point. The thing is, there are upcoming episodes of Deep Space Nine that do a much better job of highlighting the human cost of war, and episodes that characterize the Vorta better. Yeah, you can clip that horny clone
Anybody
thing
out
for
there
later.
do screen printed t-shirts? Because I think clones can be horny. Might be the best t-shirt that's ever been.
It continues. My favorite part is when Cisco tells
but hold
Jadzia.
on. Let me see it through. Let me see it through. Front of the t-shirt, it's just Keith's face. Keith, straight face. Look to camera, straight face. That's the front of the t-shirt. It says, I think clones can be horny. Back of the t-shirt, Keith, give me just a slight Randy eyebrow. Nailed it. All right, when that shows up in the mail, you can thank me later.
I will burn it.
No, you don't get it. I get it.
Oh, you get it. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Whew. YouTube viewer continues. My favorite part is when Cisco tells Jadzia that no one is laughing at her jokes. I like Jadzia as a character, but I generally do not find her quips amusing in this episode or in most others. Mike rightfully pointed out that everyone was constantly quipping in this episode, and it was annoying when everyone did it. Why do you watch us?
Quip fest.
All we do is make annoying quips.
But YouTube viewer usually points it out when he's like, that was usually he gives us a timestamp. He's like, that was 36 minutes of quips before we got anywhere.
Not shy about the constructive feedback.
Jack Barr's check.
I guess I'm not a big fan of quipping during serious moments in sci-fi. It is an overused trope. It worked well in Guardians of the Galaxy Part 1, but after that, Marvel overloaded their movies with this trope. Odo doesn't quip much, but almost every time he does quip, it lands. Less is more. And of course, Garrick's quips are pretty consistently funny, but Garrick is a guest star, not a regular. Less is more. Less is more! In all caps.
That said, we get the rare Odo quip this week,
sure do.
Right? Yeah.
He was pretty funny.
Pointed,
I'll step
pointed
down.
quip.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, right. Subtext there. I'll step down from my soapbox now. All the episode is pretty good, even if it's not my favorite. 83 out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts. Let me address the wormhole about why didn't they beam the Federation officers off of the ship. I thought this was interesting. I could be wrong, but I once recall there was one of the good guys is abducted. I recall once where one of the good guys is abducted against his or her will by a Dominion transporter, and immediately before, the character was tricked into picking up a transmitter. So I think the Dominion needs a transmitter to use their super beamer.
I like that.
JD did wonderful stream of consciousness as always. Here's some of my favorites, including "You Speak Dick." Wow, Mike.
That might be one of my favorite, my best moments.
It was good. It was quick, and I deserved it. It was nice. I remember Muniz was there for O'Brien after his 30-year prison experience. He tried to comfort him, and O'Brien pushed him back, but obviously they had gotten closer since then. No, you're right. And I remember that scene that was also kind of quippy in that sense. So Muniz and O'Brien's sort of quippy relationship had actually already been established. Yeah. JD continues, I felt for Muniz and his death felt sad to me. Yeah, it is sad. Ben has had it with the Vorta. I don't blame him. Everything he has dealt with, I would be like that. This one's got some great action moments that aren't as cheesy as some others. And the characters are really strong throughout. 89 self-sealing stem bolts. Harry Pothead says, I give this one 90 self-sealing stem bolts. It's a great episode and there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I always figured the reason the Jem'Hadar unshroud before engaging is because it's not a machine. They're not using a stealth boy or anything like that. I figure it's like flexing a muscle, and when they get busy, it's harder, for the lack of a better term, flex that muscle. That's something I keep in mind, canon only. I don't ever think they said anything like that. I like that very much.
That's cool.
If it's a biological process, I bet it takes a lot of focus.
Which they would be able to do since they're able to sort of bioengineer. So that would be an interesting thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit like D&D, where like the spellcasters are supposed to have to stay focused in order for their spells to continue working. I never played by those rules or any others. Kevin Miles gives it a 94. Hibernation Pod with an 80. Mysterious Anne coming in, as always, with something insightful and interesting as a conversation. Says 85 stem bolts. Thought-provoking content. Not my favorite one to watch. This is another episode with an interesting take on religion. Keelana's question to Cisco about his gods is fascinating. I appreciate Deep Space Nine's exploration of the Starfleet / the Federation not as the absence of religion or above beyond religion, but its own belief system with core tenets, hierarchy, directives, rituals, etc. The Vortis question invites a comparison with her religion. I hope you made your gods proud today. That's both totally unfair, comparing the Federation and Starfleet to the Founders and the Dominions is a wild kind of both sides-ism, and at the same time opens up a troubling question. Can the Federation really claim to be free of zealots or well-intentioned true believers who are misguided or make mistakes because of their beliefs? All fascinating. Cisco and Dax's conversation about service and whether the sacrifice is worth it is really interesting, fraught, and morally ambiguous because Keelana has suggested this religious lens. Dax and Cisco concludes it was worth it. Their faith and worldview is both shaken and strengthened by this experience of death and loss. Which, I think that's a really good way to analyze. Speaking of someone outside of religion, the obvious question, right? If God is good, why do all these bad things happen? And I think this is an interesting exploration because it's like the bad things and the good things are inextricably intertwined, and the journey of working through it is kind of a big part of it. It's interesting. She continues, the Worf stuff is also interesting. He's kind of like the oblivious religious person who responds to someone else's suffering by sharing something that's theologically comforting to him, but with no awareness or care to the fact that it's harmful or unhelpful theology for somebody else. Yes, God, that person is so annoying.
Well, the circle of grief, right?
Yeah.
Often people, you have to realize where you are on that ring, and they're close, so I guess it's a little. It's not as egregious as sometimes everybody's like, oh, I know what you're going through. Here's my experience, which is not always the most comforting thing to hear.
Well, and I think it's sometimes even worse than that, because it's not just here's my experience, like here's how to fix it.
Yeah. Or here's how we deal with it, yeah.
My philosophy will fix your problems. In Next Gen, she continues, Worf always filled the void of spirituality and meaningful rituals, which was kind of the default Champlain. In this episode, he's shown as being really lousy chaplain. He's kind of the default chaplain. In this episode, he's shown as being a really lousy chaplain to O'Brien, lots of judgment and implying that his way of dealing with death is the best. At the end, he's back to being a pretty good chaplain and friend. He meets O'Brien where he is, honors what he's already been doing, and accompanies him and supports him in a way that's meaningful to both of them. Really good point. It's hard for me to avoid getting emotional about this, but one of the things that bothers me the most about Next Gen and what DS9 inherited from Next Gen is that they imagined a future where no humans are sitting Shiva anymore. I wish they'd thought through the rule in the writer's room a little more carefully, that Earth could have no religions, and what that would mean in terms of erasing important parts of human culture and identity. I wish the writers had been free to have Worf share that exact same ritual with his colleagues, and have it be something he learned from his human parents. I think that by having Worf join O'Brien at Kike's side, the Deep Space Nine writers were sort of implying that humans haven't forgotten the rituals of grief that are rooted in religion, but they are really constrained by Trek's existing rules. Yeah, I mean, she's right about Roddenberry's vision of a utopian future included no religion. And Well, I can certainly see the merits to that. I would probably imagine that myself. I don't think that means devoid of tradition that grew out of religion and ritual that grew out of religion. And I think Deep Space Nine eventually finds a much healthier and much more realistic way to handle that, and that is to include people's faiths as part of infinite diversity and infinite combination, and sort of Kira's faith or Worf's faith, or whatever it is, you integrate and accept everybody coming from where they're coming from. And I think it ends up being, it's less of a soapbox hard line than it is an actual way to move forward that is practical. But interesting as always, and thank you as always for your thoughts. Mike?
This is the best part of the podcast. If you want to be a part of that community, patreon.com/KNM. Forget supporting the show, which you will be doing. You're just going to hang out with those smart people.
Yeah, way smarter than us, no question. All right, well, what do you say we talk about this episode? Looking for Parmok in all of the wrong places.
Why does it not work? Come on.
Aw, keep hitting that button. There it is. Which aired on October 14th, 1996. The top song, thank God, continued to be Macarena. Mike, let's hear a little and see a little choreo.
You see, of course, they complimented me on it, so I had to I just can't riff it. I gotta really
No.
It's still the Macarena, and we are still watching Deep Space. No, let me try again. I gotta scant it. It's still the Macarena, and we're still watching Deep Space. Everyone is banging, Dax and Worf are gonna suck face. The O'Brien Kira thing is weird, it's a little over the place. Hey, Quark gets laid. Aye! Thank you.
Fantastic. Wow, look at the effort.
Well, I mean, hard quotes effort, but
Holy crap. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that glory. Speaking of glory, the top movie, it's Jaws in the Jungle. It's Ghost in the Darkness.
Okay.
Val Kilmer and somebody, forget who else the other one was, fighting a lion in Africa.
Huh. Okay.
It was, it was what it was. Not particularly memorable. Mike, what was on TV? Was there anything memorable on tonight?
Not really, Keith, but I will say a couple of interesting things. One, football was here. Monday Night Football. Your Green Bay Packers defeated the then San Francisco 49ers in overtime, Keith. The different overtime rules back in the day. First score wins, and such the score was 23-20. And also, in another football game that wasn't football, the Atlanta Braves defeated the St. Louis Cardinals in the National League Championship Series 14-0, which is a baseball score you don't hear that often.
Baseball. Boo. Yeah, what was Voyager doing? Nothing. They were off this week. They did a good job of sort of keeping there always be a new episode of Trek on the whole season, even if it were not the same show doing that. The weekly world news headline, boy, the change in technology. A pervert puts a spy camera in his shoe to look up girls' skirts. Yeah.
I have an anecdote. But I'm...
Wow! Should I can I get like a warning siren? Danger, Will Robinson? I can't wait for Mike to cut this from the episode.
I have a friend who was part of the creative. I'm really editing as I go. Part of the creative team for a community theater production. It was not a professional production, and it was with a wide range of ages for the actors. Anyway, this friend, colleague, was contacted by the local police department and asked to come in and identify something. And that's not something you're expecting. And I can't imagine what you would, they couldn't give much information over the phone. So apparently there had been a peeper in the cast who had set up like capturing devices in the bathroom, right? To as gross and perverted and just horrific and criminal as that is. But the point of this story is my friend colleague has identifiable tattoos, and so they needed to confirm that this was his junk captured via his tattoos, so that they could like put this case together. And I was like, wow, can you imagine? You're just working on a show, community theater, and then you get called by the police. Confusion number one. Confusion number two, there's like, can you identify your tattoos? And you're like, yeah, sure, why? Not what you're expecting.
That's not a kind of day I want to have.
Ooh, man.
That's not great.
No.
Well, don't do that. Don't put a spy cam in your shoe.
Thanks. That's good advice, Keith. Well done.
Yeah. The more you know. All right, this episode, Mike, did you know this episode was directed by friend of the show, Andrew Robinson?
I didn't know that.
Yes. This is his only episode of Deep Space Nine, but he did do 2 episodes of Voyager later, and 7 episodes of Judging Amy, if you're keeping track at home. So you can tell, you can see his guiding hands in here, because it's a funny episode, and has all of that zing to it that you would imagine from Garrett. It was written by Ronald D. Moore, who was really busy at this point because he also wrote First Contact, which is about to launch here in the States and was in post-production when they filmed this episode. Mike, what do you say we do something trivial? Now, Keith, waste your time.
With what?
With trivial trivia. Okay. Sorry, I'm solving tax issues. You know what? It's tax day on Monday, folks.
Yeah.
Which means I gotta finish that up. Gotta get those deductions in. Although these days it doesn't really count for much. I think we might actually be taking the standard deduction this year.
That's what I ended up doing, but luckily we weren't as destroyed as we were last time. So
Well, the stratifications changed. The classifications changed, thankfully. So people like us, we don't have to pay as many taxes.
Yay.
Much appreciated. Yay, but maybe, other people pay more taxes.
Yay.
All right, trivial trivia. Here we go. When Grilka first meets Quark, he holds up his drink tray for protection, and she goes for her knife. This, of course, is mimicking their first meeting in the House of Quark, although more playfully. So if you were paying attention in the background of what was going on there, be like, oh, I remember that. They've got an inside joke. Phil Morris, who played the Klingon T'Pok, appeared in the original Star Trek series. He was in the original series almost exactly 30 years before in Miri, as Boy in the Army Helmet in his first ever acting appearance at the age of 10.
oh, that's cool.
He was subsequently seen as Cadet Foster in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, as Rametta Klan in Rocks and Shoals coming up, and as John Kelly in the episode 1 Small Step of Voyager. According to Star Trek Deep Space Nine Companion, which Mike is not looking at anymore, Morris auditioned for the role of Benjamin Sisko, but was turned down because he was too young. Also this episode, and you can 100% see this on screen, Armin Shimmerman did many of his own stunts during the fight scene. He practiced at home for 10 days prior to shooting the scene, and according to Shimmerman, I got pretty good with the Batleths. Shimmerman also worked with a mime artist to help him make it look as if the Batleth had a mind of its own at the end of the fight, which I thought he did spectacularly. Like, the mime work is very, very clear. So, Mike, you've got that amazing custom Quark figure from this episode. Who are the type of people who might support you by sending you amazing custom figures?
Keith, you can see right there that last target there is the folks who've sent us amazing things in the mail. Those people is our good friend JD over at JD Makes, Lutz Kremer, Wyatt Eldridge, and of course Chris Mitchell, CRM Pat, Joshua Cronin, Colin Dagan, and then of course
what is happening over there with your brain?
Stroke it out a little bit. We also would like to thank the rest of our friends: Brian Kimball, Beersock, Jason Moe, Peter Bank, Frank Reich, Quark, Spar, who we'll talk more about, Josh Cronin, Ryan Chesley, Andrew Hayes, and the mysterious household, Worf's Big Old Boot Chips, Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, Alan, Anton, welcome back, buddy. Sierra Productions, Nicolay, he's being house sat, Delusions at Noon YouTube viewer, James Hubbard, all of our friends, and of course the Chancellor Jem, who is working hard for the money. She's out doing her mileage right now because she is a champion. Listen, you support the show. We need it. We appreciate it. You also get to watch me watch Deep Space Nine. You get a bunch of stuff. We're watching a movie soon. Keith, we're going to talk about when that's going to happen. Listen, there's just the best people. They're the patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we've got a whole mess of stuff we got to watch. We got to pick some times because we got to
get it did. Mike's going away for a little while.
Uh-oh. What did you do?
No.
How long is the sentence?
About a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah. No, we should figure that out because we've got multiple episodes of Next Gen to watch. We've got an episode of Original Series to watch. We've got Wrath of Khan to watch. Lots of stuff. We'll make an evening of it. It'll be fun.
It'll be great.
All right. So our guest stars this week include, of course, Rosalind Chow back as Keiko O'Brien, Mary Kay Adams back as Grilka, Joseph Ruskin back as Tumek, and Phil Morris as Tapak. What do you say? We go into the screening room, Mike.
Woo!
What's going on over there, Mike?
Hard to say, man. Oh no, Keith, I didn't fix the one thing, but that's okay. I can do it right here, right now.
Uh-oh, what's the one thing?
For some reason, all the slides got messed up. Whenever OBS updates, you gotta redo the source files.
Oh.
So whatever.
So it's always a mess.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a mess, I'm going to read what I wrote, the first sentence of this. Not necessarily what I meant, but I think it kind of works. So in our teaser, Bashir wanks down a hallway and starts eavesdropping on the O'Briens who are fighting inside. Bashir, that's not good.
Yeah.
Bashir walks down the hallway. He just reset me. Quark catches him and, of course, can hear everything with his super Ferengi ears. Quark describes quite the conflict. Then Keiko shows up. It's not her that Miles is arguing with, it's Kira. Apparently, O'Brien is trying to stop Kira from playing spring ball while carrying the baby. Meanwhile, Worf and Dax are arguing about Klingon opera. Worf references the strengths of a singer named Barak's intonation, which isn't quite right, but I get what he's doing there. I have tremendous intonation. It's very strong. It's the strongest intonation in America. Dax wonders why he doesn't vary his performance by even a half tone. All right, none of this makes any musical sense whatsoever.
Yeah, you just gotta let it go.
A musician did not write that scene. She teases him about Worf.
It's like when people are like, they're like, yeah, like I don't really like the timbre of his voice, and you're like, all right, different conversation. Well, do another
the timbre.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool.
Or, well, at any time you see people fake playing instruments, my aunt was here for a little bit, and we were talking about that. She played in the, she's a first violist in the Maggia Musicale orchestra in Florence. And like, it just, every time she sees somebody try to play a stringed instrument on TV, it's death.
At least the guitar, that's the one that bothers me the most, right? Because yeah, I get it. Like, not everybody can, like, learning fingerings or even fake chords. I get it. You can put your hand like this. We'll suspend our disbelief. But everyone can learn a rhythm of like what a strum would look like based on what the strum of the thing is. But then you see people completely different things and they're doing all this and you're like, you're not even trying. Okay.
Yeah, well, but
Piano's
also
just as bad.
It's all bad. And look, I have done some bad fake string playing in my days, but I will say for TV and film, in their defense, sort of, you don't even know if they're hearing the music when they're filming it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, because obviously they're filming it silent because they've got to mix it later. So like, God knows what they have to work with there. Anyway, so she teases Worf about being riddled with contradictions. Then Grilka enters through the airlock. We remember who Grilka was, and Worf is immediately smitten. She is glorious. Dex shakes it off and plays buddy as they watch her from afar. Then Grilka hugs Quark, and Dax explains that she is Quark's ex-wife. The spark is gone. In Act 1, Quark and Grilka... You remembered who Grilka was by this point.
It took me a second, but then it came back. When I saw her hug Quark, it all flooded back.
I mean, luckily, Exposition Dax was helpful.
Dax position?
Dax, there you go. That's what I'm looking for. Sorry, my brain is dead. I'm having terrible TMJ right now, so I can barely move my jaw. Anyway, Quark and Grilka catch up. They're happy to see each other, and he asks what she's here for. She explains that the war with the Federation has been very costly to her house, both in ships and people. Which you realize, like, a lot of people dying in this conflict right now. So Quark then quotes 70s pop, but unfortunately, he forgets the "Good God, y'all" in war. What's it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Let me ask you this real quick. Refresh me.
Yeah.
I don't remember during the episode House of Quark, was it?
Uh-huh.
Them having any actual chemistry. Was there any flirty boots happening then? I don't recall that, but I could just be forgetting.
There was from Quark. Quark was interested. I think by the very end, there was a little bit. Like I think by the very he had at least earned her respect. And did she kiss him comedically at the end of it during the divorce? Anyway, I think they planted the seeds just enough to make me not feel weird about this.
Well, I mean, Quark is generally
Quark is successful with the ladies.
Yeah.
I gotta say, he's got more game than I do.
So he was that Vulcan that one time, right? That Vulcan smuggler, and he was all
that Vulcan. He also had his Cardassian ex.
So I mean, by no means did it strike me as weird, but I just couldn't remember if there was a seed planted.
That dude gets around.
I mean, by the end, there's definitely a seed planted, but.
Yep. All right, so
it was right there. I mean, it was low-hanging fruit. You know what I mean?
Well, when you get older, I mean, it hangs a little lower.
Okay. All right.
So Grilka asks for his help sorting out their financial records. Quark is excited because he thinks, hey, he's got a shot. But her bodyguard comes up and says, if you screw this up, I'll kill you. Oh, well, that ups the stakes. In Ops, Dax restacks the last Grilka episode. Worf is not impressed and is offended that Quark ever had a shot with her. Dax says he's got a bad case of Parmak, the Klingon word for love, but with more aggressive undertones. Okay, I'm gonna take that at what you mean it to be, and not think that's creepy. Dax is doing a pretty good job of hiding her jealousy, but we do see it. Meanwhile,
did I get the one screenshot where two actors have their eyes closed?
Two of the most attractive actors in the world derping it up at the same time. They say they're such good actors. Yep. They blink in unison.
That's them prejudging the really bad jokes that I'm gonna have sprinkled everywhere.
Oh, great. Oh, you haven't sprinkled them enough?
Oh, they've been sprinkled. Yeah.
Okay, good. Meanwhile, Bashir gives O'Brien a gizmo to make Kira stop sneezing. Bashir lets on that he knows about O'Brien and Kira fighting.
Keith, I have
O'Brien.
a request.
Yes.
I'm ready for the sneezing thing to be done. I think it was cool that they they put it off in passing in the beginning as like a, it's devil's in the details, and then they've referenced it a couple times to be like, hey, you remember that thing? It's not Schrodinger's sneeze, but that's the wrong. I'm thinking of the other
Chekhov's
sneeze.
Yes.
Yep. I'm done with it now. Enough sneezing bits. Enough sneeze lore. Yeah. Just put it out there.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I mean, it's like a whole scene.
Mm-hmm. So O'Brien also asks about a rash that Kira has on the back of her thighs that he saw while helping her out of the tub. Bashir and possibly Alexander go, excuse me? WTF?
Do you mean possibly literally everyone who's ever watched the episode is like, wait, okay, excuse me? What? Are there no boundaries? Listen, I don't, everybody can have their own kind of surrogate procedures, but I don't know that I gotta help you take a bath.
I mean, she seems capable of getting in and out of tubs.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get back into it.
Yeah, well.
I'm trying to keep an open mind.
So Bashir, possibly Alexander, asks,
Did you pee?
Did you look? And it's both kind of gross, but also
fair.
That's how straight guys talk to each other privately. Sorry, it's
not that way.
It's a little gross, but us straight men we're gross. So there you go. Later,
I don't know what the hell he's talking about, everybody. So I'm just going with it.
Cut to our conversation 10 seconds after this ends.
Oh boy.
Later in Quark's, Worf goes up to Morn and says, I'll apologize for this at a later time.
Awesome.
Then throws him off his stool. Then he aggressively
time out. Before that, which I think is awesome, the fact that they were like, you know what, Morn, we're giving you a whole scene. Really bite in. Really go for it.
But you're not allowed to talk.
No, point to your cup, then point to the... It's funny, because they usually, the joke is that he's very chatty, but we just don't get to catch it. But in here, I don't know why he wouldn't just ask for it. It's funny. Great scene.
Well, because he was scooping out the last drop.
Poor guy. Imagine how hot this actor is. Always.
Oh, my God.
He's wearing a full down jacket.
I mean, the worst part about it is because he never speaks, he's technically an extra.
Yeah, but he's getting paid as a principal. They must be throwing him a bone. You don't think?
He's not even credited for most of it.
It sucks.
It's hot nonsense. But spoiler alert, he will get his own episode by the end of the series, and it's really fun.
His face there, though. He's so good.
Like, oh, God. So Worf throws him down and aggressively starts a fight with Grilka's guard. This is, of course, how Klingons hit on each other. But the older Klingon pulls Worf aside and says, buddy, you're barking up the wrong tree. Grilka can't mate with you because your house is a curse. The house of Moog has no honor. But he seems like a nice dude and gives good advice. But he does say, Worf, you don't know anything about Klingon women.
Didn't he have that Alexander kid, though?
Sure did. He sure did. But he said you haven't ever wooed a Klingon woman. And if you remember, she wooed him pretty hard. So we haven't actually seen it do it. But he's like, you don't know anything, leave and don't return. So in Act 2, Worf horribly friend-zones Dax as he talks about his misstep with Grilka. Then Quark comes in and also asks for help courting Grilka. Worf is disgusted. Dax tries to explain Klingon mating rituals to Quark, but also knows that Worf is listening. Take it slow at dinner and talk. Ask about her family's accomplishments. Worf chimes in here. Now, he's moved on from wooing Grilka to proving that he knows how to woo a Klingon. and says Grilka is from the Makrovak region. It is customary among her people for the man to bring the leg of a linkta to the first courtship dinner, bring it fresh as if you had just killed it. Then use the light to sweep everything off the table and declare in a loud voice, I have brought you this. From this day, I wish to provide food for you and your house, and all I ask is to share your company and do honor to your name. Quark's like, then what? Then either she accepts your offer or she has her bodyguard shatter every bone in your body.
I love the beat change here because she definitely first responds to Worf and is very turned on by his kind of
she's like, yeah,
energy.
You better throw that linkta leg down.
And then she beat shifts to the comedic drop. It's really great time. Terry's very, very good in this episode.
Yeah, she is, because she has a lot of different layers to play, right? Mm-hmm. Because she's obviously got a thing for Worf. She's being friend zoned, but she decides to help to go along with it and be like the Cyrano in training. But also she's 300 years old and has been through this a million times. So you can tell that yes, she's feeling sort of, she's feeling jealous and this is weird and sad to be friend zoned, but also like, I can handle it. Because this is like my 700th time.
This episode could quickly fall into like Degrassi High territory, right?
Right.
But it never gets there because Dax, we know through Terry's performance, there's a maturity there that consistent maturity throughout the whole thing that never gets to the sort of pining place, and it makes it all click. I think she is what saves this episode from being trite.
Yeah, well, again, she's always in control. Like she's got a plan. She's going to play it out. If it doesn't work, that's fine.
An element of fun for her as well. Whereas Worf's not having any fun here, and clearly Quark's not because the stakes are life and death. But for her, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and so like the Dax and the Jadzia are sort of on this dance where Jadzia is feeling those butterflies and is sort of vulnerable and young. And Dax is like, I've done this a million times. Let's dance.
The only thing that we can talk about later, but the only thing that I would question is why all of this time they've been flirty style and doing their Batleths stuff. Like why the Dax character of all characters would be so coy and play it so slow. But I guess when you're that old, the long game is kind of fun too.
It's kind of fun. I think
she'd be more forward, but I can see she is eventually.
But also, I mean, we've all been there where you're like, should I not? And then you see them like start to look away, and they're like, oh wait, no.
Yeah, that's fair. And they do work together, so there's boundaries. Yeah, it's cool.
I think it's very realistic that him noticing someone else is what pushes her into overdrive there. Yeah. Anyway, later in the O'Brien quarters, Miles massages Kira. Keiko comes in with some uniforms, and she is 100% cool with the massage and encourages him to massage harder. They keep chatting while he continues massaging, and they discuss going to Ireland together, and then all of a sudden it gets accidentally weird. Uh-oh. Later, it's like... I buy it though. We'll talk more about this sort of arc in it, but like as a first beat, like I buy this. So later on the Defiant Bridge, Worf sings along with some Klingon opera. It's basically me in my basement the minute I'm home alone. Mm-hmm. Worf and I have a lot of similarities. So Quark comes in and Worf is embarrassed. Quark thanks Worf for his advice. His Klingon wooing is working. And he describes the evening, and Worf thinks it's the perfect night. Worf then pulls out a big nose and agrees to Cyrano officially for Quark.
There's a line delivery in this, and I wish I had clipped it, the audio, but where he's like, basically Quark says, "Can you help me?" And Dorn does this like really long take and just goes, Yes, I can. And there's like a confidence, a pathos, all kinds of fun layers to it, and it is also funny. It's just great. There's so much about this episode we'll talk later that I'm on the fence about, but there's so much good stuff that it's hard to just cast it off as like a funny one-off, you know?
Oh, I find this episode delightful, frankly. And because, you know, and I don't normally find the romance stuff, I don't normally necessarily care much about the romance stuff, but all of these character beats are earned. Right? These are all very much in keeping with these characters. Quark is acting like Quark. Worf is acting like Worf. Dax is acting like Worf. And how they bounce off each other, it makes sense. And it's exciting. Did you see the Kevin Kline Cyrano?
Yes.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was on Broadway like 15 years ago, something like that.
There was one of the Cyrano movies I really enjoyed too, and I can't remember. Not the Steve Martin one. Although that has its charms as well.
Yeah, anyway, so in the holodeck, Worf and Dax teach Quark how to fight with a Batleth and speak Klingon phrases of love. Both Worf and Dax are wearing Quark and Dax are wearing crazy ceremonial furs. Quark refers to the Klingon language as Klingonese, which I think is technically correct, but that is a ridiculous thing to call.
Correct? I mean,
Correct.
You are.
Look,
I mean, I've seen you
I'm on a struggle
before.
bus today.
Which is technically correct.
Look, my jaw hurts, okay? It's hard to move my
I'm
mouth.
sorry.
And I'm looking down at the sheet. I have so many more words to say.
Oh, boy, buddy. I'm sorry.
But I think it was James Doohan who called it Klingonese. That's so stupid. But whatever. Worf gives him good direction and motivation for his next date. And they're reenacting the love story of Kalis and his lady.
Which we've heard before, right? We've
I mean,
heard that lore like in a grander context before.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly explored the great Kalis battles here and there. And he had a whole bunch of massacres that the Klingons are all excited about. Quark says, "This is ridiculous. I'm surrounded by corpses. My shoes are dripping with blood. Why? You want me to feel romantic? Why am I putting myself through this?" And Dax says, "Because later that night, Kalis and Lucara jumped on each other like a pair of crazed voles." One more time. Of course, they use the same idiom there twice in the episode, like a pair of crazed voles. That's weird. They should have done another version of.
I didn't catch it, so that's cool. A good catch.
Yeah, it's just like a writing thing. You know, it's like it's using the same word in a paragraph to describe. Like you want to really just keep mixing it up. Anyway,
this is another great beat here where she makes a fake flirty gesture towards him, and he just goes, "One more time."
Let's do it. It's great. Again. As good as her performance is, Armin's performance in this is fantastic.
And something we never mentioned, but I think is awesome, is because it is subtle storytelling that has cultural commentary baked within it without being overt about it. My point being, it's very clear that the Ferengi character design is like a very monster-esque, grotesque-ish. What we would never say, as in our human culture here, we would never outwardly say is like an attractive aesthetic, a handsome aesthetic, right? However, it's never played that way on the show. Very beautiful women, of varying races, are very much attracted to Quark, and he's got game and all kinds of stuff. So I think that's a really kind of subtle commentary that I appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, these people get to know him and other Ferengis, and they, you know, I genuinely feel that the more familiar we get with anything, the more attractive it becomes. The more you sort of get to know it and get to see the attractive parts. So later, Odo and Kira go over the criminal activity report, and Odo complains about O'Brien not getting things done, and Kira immediately defends him. So Odo's like, "Are we growing fond of the chief, are we? What are you talking about? I've always liked Miles." "You've always liked the chief, but Miles is a different story." "I'm living with him. I'm carrying his baby. Don't you think that would change things a little?" "Such as, we're closer. I'm a part of the family now." "Which part?" "What?" Which part of the family are you? Sister, daughter, cousin?
Au pair.
Au pair, yes. Renee's take is really funny. And Odo's take on it is funny. Because, like, obviously, he's got subtext going on there himself. And so we see a whole bunch of people navigating the friend zone in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And some more transparently than others. So later, Grilka's bodyguard complains to the older Klingon about Grilka consorting with a Ferengi. Quark and Grilka arrive, having slaughtered everyone in the Hollow Suite, and they're delighted the date has gone really well. But Grilka asks Quark, why would you pursue me? And he says, I pursue only things I wish to acquire. Acquire? Now you sound like a Ferengi again, and I love this beat. He says, I am a Ferengi. That means I have a talent for appreciating objects of great value, and I believe you to be worth more than all the latinum in the quadrant. Now, I think anyone would be like, not an object, but in his language, in the Ferengi language, it's a pretty good game, and it works. But then,
let the panties drop. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
he got game. That's the thing. He's got game. We could woke dissect the language and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. It's within his vernacular. It's within that cultural, and you just can't deny somebody with game. And Quark got it.
Well, and he has excellent instincts. Mm-hmm. Right? He really knows how to read people.
But he's also yes, correct. He's picking up that she's digging what he's putting down. So,
and I like the fact that while he's doing all this Klingon stuff to impress her, when she calls him on doing something Ferengi, he owns it. Like, I am a Ferengi.
Yes.
And like, if I'm gonna hop on board with all of your traditions, like, here I am, get on board with mine.
And I love that they give her a chance to verbalize it in the next scene or a couple scenes.
And I think it also speaks well of her character to be like, yeah, you know what? You're right. That's fair. But unfortunately, Topak, the guard, says, nuh-uh, you and I, we're going to fight to the death. That's how all Klingon episodes get to eventually.
Yeah, although we never went back to the dangling Chad of, wasn't there a quid pro quo here? If you help her, you're good. If you don't help her with the money stuff, I kill you. So he's sort of changed the deal a little bit. A little bait and switch.
Well, because the first part was about helping her financially. This is about banging her. That's a whole nother ballgame.
You don't tell the prince, but he works for her, right?
Yeah.
You don't get to tell your boss who they can bang.
Well, but he thinks he can. Maybe we have our third friend zone trifecta here.
Okay.
That's how I read it. So in Act 4, in O'Brien's quarters, Miles and Keiko are having a romantic dinner together. Then Kira comes in and it's super awkward. Keiko says, massage her. And both... I mean, she does.
Yeah. Your narration of it is better. Keiko says, massage her.
But, of course, having their awkward moment, Miles and Kira start freaking out.
You watched the watch-along, Keith. I don't get a pat on the back for not being too horny? When Keiko's giving those kind of orders around, I could have gone a place, but I didn't. I was very respectful.
Yes, congratulations on not being a dirtbag like usual. Do you want a sticker?
Listen, I refrained from the friend zone bone moan.
The friend zone bone moan? All right, you coined it. Now you gotta make that sound.
Well, first having a massage. All right, join us at patreon.com/KNM or hashtag friendzoneBoneMoan.
We still gotta hear it. I'm not continuing until we hear that bone moan. Hashtag friendzoneBoneMoan.
Massage her.
Keiko? Keiko's in the friend zone too?
Yeah, everybody's in.
Oh my goodness, what a problem. So, probably because of this conversation, Kira has a plan to go to Bajor for a few days to get away from the awkwardness. But, of course, it backfires because Keiko says Miles should go too.
Mike, what am I doing? Keith's jaw's messed up. My screenshots, this might be the worst of the series.
But if you want to know what the bone zone looks like on your face, that is the friend zone bone moan as a picture.
That is the prone friend zone bone moan. Okay.
Oh, that is not the bon mot that we were hoping it was.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Rosalind Chow. Nice of you to drop by. Anyway. But,
she's like, you're gonna get on that ship and go with her.
Massage her! She puts her foot down and says, you're going. Meanwhile, Quark, Worf, and Dax try to figure out what to do. Quark wants to pull the same trick as last time, throwing down his weapon and saying, kill me, but Worf says, yeah, he'll just do it. But Dax has an idea. This scene was not originally in the script. This scene that we just hear explaining the situation, they would have cut straight to Quark battling Dax quite effectively with a Batleth. But we see both he and Worf are wearing devices. Quark's body is being puppeted by Worf, who is fighting him. I think we really needed that scene.
Yeah, it's not. It takes the heavy lifting out of the choreo, right? Like the choreo works better once we know, rather than having to figure it out through the choreo and the little gizmo.
Yeah, and also like answering the question, why wouldn't he just do the same thing he did last time? Was good. So all three of the actors are actually doing this as we enter the scene. No stunts yet. Really great work by everybody. And Worf says the way gives him advice. The way she carries herself, confident and strong. She commands those around her. The proud tilt of her head. Asks like, why is she so great? Worf says, yeah, the way she carries herself, confident, strong. She commands those around her. The proud tilt of her head. The way her face betrays none of her true feelings. The power of her voice and her eyes, hard as Sapar gemstones and twice as sharp. And Dax says, it sounds like you're describing a statue. What would you want with a woman like that? What would you do with a woman like that? Put her up on a pedestal and clean her once a week? Pretty funny. You do not understand. Dax says, I guess not. Because if I were in your shoes, I'd be looking for someone a little more entertaining, a little more fun, maybe even a little more attainable.
A little quippy, maybe?
Worf said, yeah, I mean, that's what I need. Ladies of the world, you need to knock me over the head and tell me that we're dating now, because I will not pick up what you're laying down.
Put that on your Tinder, Keith. It's going to go great.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Worf says, you're not in my shoes. Dax says, too bad. You'd be amazed what I can do in a pair of 18 boots. Size 18, that's big.
I don't know what she's saying, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's probably worn size 18 at some point.
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, she means that literally.
You imagine being with a Trill, though? Because, not to get too graphic, but you're really kind of getting the experience of someone who is tested.
It'd be a lot of pressure to live up to. It'd be like, it's just like, oh, you have 300 years of people, and I'll do my best, but I can't compete with 300 years.
I know, it's like you're dating a Michelin star chef, you don't know it, and the first day you're like, I make a mean scrambled egg.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like,
cool. Great.
Yeah, all right, cool. Both in the scene and the stage directions, Worf does not take the hint. Later, Quark enters the holosuite wearing Klingon battle gear. Rilke, Tumek, and Topak are there waiting for him. Now, interestingly, the Cardassian holosuite door makes the Federation holodeck door sound. Now, this is either an error or an Easter egg, but I found it distracting. I was like, that's not right. And
do you know what bothered me? Didn't bother me. That's the wrong. It's not a wormhole because it makes sense. But I just felt like the puppeteering bit is what we focused on. But it's also kind of rad because clearly Worf can, like, see through Quark's eyes, too. Because he has no visual indication of what's taking place in the room to have the fight, so clearly...
Well, it's the device. I think there's a camera or something that allows him to see through the device. Or sensor data or something.
Yeah, whatever it is pretty rad, but I wish that had been more sort of
demonstrated. Well, they talked about the tech of it all, the writers did, and they're like, yeah, we don't want to like go too far down that rabbit hole. Just, it's cool. Just roll with it.
That's fair.
I think that's oh my goodness, the sun came out. I've got to change my exposure.
Oh my god. I was gonna say something, but I didn't want to.
Look at that! Wow, good. Been waiting for the sun to come out for 2 days. All right. So Worf turns on his puppet toy, and Quark answers the challenge. The fight begins. Worf shadow fights from the next holosuite. Topak is shocked that Quark can fight. We see the stunt double a little bit, but most of this is actually Armin. What a great episode for him. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Then, inevitably, Worf accidentally breaks his toy and cuts the strings on puppet Quark. In Act 5, Quark realizes he's toast, but he improvises by claiming the Ferengi right of proclamation.
Very D&D, Keith. This made me think of you. This is a very D&D scene.
The type of nonsense I would pull D&D every time, but it's great. It's great for Quark. It's, it's the same thing in terms
right of let me get to my bone moan. Mm-hmm. The right of proclamation.
I feel like every episode is us just proclamating for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think you're correct. You're correct.
I'm correct. Oh my god, it's not good. We're not going to win our Emmy for this one.
Mm-mm.
But I like, once again, him, even in a sort of desperate way, like, hey, I'm a Ferengi, that matters too. We need to accept both.
And he earned it, and she gives him that because she has recognized that he is, she ain't dumb, right? She knows that some of this has been.
No, he does great. So he makes a speech as a Ferengi tradition, and Grilka thinks that's fair since he respected their tradition. And it's pretty ridiculous. To this end, my blade soars through the aquarium of my soul, seeking the kelp of discontent, which must be severed so that the rocky bottom of love lies in waiting with fertile sand for the coming seed of Grilka's affection. And yet, does this explain my need for her? No. It is like, a giant cave of emptiness waiting for the bats of love to hang by. Really ridiculous. I wrote down, he's basically Paul Heyman. He's able to just talk. It doesn't matter. It's always entertaining. Then the gizmo works again, and he returns to the fight. Worf, wins, and Worf won't let Quark kill him. Armin does some terrific mime work, being controlled by Worf from afar. Really excellent. Like, I didn't realize until this episode how physically talented Armin is.
Oh,
but it's really,
VIP.
really great.
VIP.
Yeah.
Or MVP, excuse me.
Yeah, well, he's both. He's both. He hands Grilka Topak's Batleth, and she fires him. Quark and Grilka then start the wrestling. They gonna do it. Back with Dax and Worf, Dax puts all of her chips on the table. She challenges him, and they begin a Klingon ritual of getting it on. Here we go. We have crossed the Rubicon. Meanwhile, on the runabout, are we going to get a trifecta? O'Brien and Kira awkwardly get on the runabout. They're going to be about to go on an insanely romantic vacation together. And O'Brien says, I'm not going. And they've sort of addressed the situation directly, and they know this is not a good idea. So he's going to take the heat from Keiko, and she's going to go bang Shakar instead. And he says, have a good trip. Thanks. He says, it would have been nice. She says, in another life. Let's not think about that. Forget I brought it up. And then the stage direction, they smile at each other and pause again, lost in the moment as they lock eyes. Miles? Yes, Nerys? Get out. Right. So they have this scene. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are in this beat here. We'll save it for the end. Back in the infirmary, Bashir catalogs Quark's Klingon sex injuries. He's got a compound fracture and a compound town fracture, if you know what I mean. But he's delighted. Then, Worf and Dax enter looking similarly beat up. Bashir regrets asking questions of anyone. And Alex is pretty funny in that beat. Everybody's comedic game is so much better later in this. And honestly, like, I've said it many times, but Star Trek is not good at funny, or at least it wasn't during Next Gen era. It was sometimes funny, but like this is like reliably, consistently, they're trying to be funny and they're succeeding at being funny, and that's rare for Star Trek. But then Worf and Dax have a conversation. He says,
correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we have this almost exact beat with Chapel and Spock in Strange New Worlds?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
They might have been referencing the scene.
Yeah.
Worf says, you realize that according to Klingon tradition, we have to get married. But as you keep insisting, you are not a traditional woman. And Dax says, and the truth is, Worf, at heart, you're not much of a traditional man. Or a Klingon. I added that myself, but I think it's important. Worf says, you may be right. How do you wish to proceed? I don't know. You must have some idea. You were the aggressor? Yes. And now there are many questions that must be answered. Dax says, I don't feel like answering questions. Why don't we just take it one day at a time and see what happens? And Worf says something I understand with every fiber of my being. He says, I do not like the uncertainty of that arrangement. Dax says, well, one thing's for certain, you stopped thinking about Grilka. And Worf laughs. Hilarious. That's the end of the episode, but it's not how the episode originally ended before they put in that other scene. We have a scene between Grilka and Quark originally. And Grilka says, I will take my leave now, Quark. Thank you for your financial advice. ... My pleasure. I hope it was worth the trip. The trip had its own rewards. They smile at each other for a moment, savoring the memory. Quark says, will I see you again? I'll be back. Don't come back too soon. I need time to heal. She looks at him for a bit, then cuts loose with her own laughter. Quark starts laughing too, but carefully because of his injuries. Bashir reacts. Then another Klingon laugh echoes out of surgery, this time Dax's laughter providing the melodic counterpoint. Bashir stands there, trapped between two rooms of mirth that he'd rather not think about. And Bashir says, there's days I really hate this job.
That's a great
and
scene.
That would have been the end of the episode. I think that also would have been a good end, but I see why they
you
cut
have to
that
focus
to make
on
the other scene.
a storyline that's going to be ongoing. So
yeah. Anyway, so there we go. What do you say we move along home? Okay, Mike, we will begin, as we always begin, with wormholes in the plot. Did you have any wormholes?
This is one of those episodes where I don't think anything particularly sticks out or is necessary. I mean, they covered enough of the bases, and the gizmos were explained enough, and I thought the triangles and the friend zonings, all of that was kind of established prior episodes. So I felt pretty clean about it. Do you have anything?
No, I really don't. I think, like, the only thing that feels a little surprising is not a wormhole is the O'Brien Kira stuff, but I don't think that's necessarily a wormhole. It's just surprising. So I think in terms of like the plot device, the technology of it all, loved it.
Cool.
I thought that all made sense to me. Now let's talk about our best moment while I readjust my lighting.
Man, there's some good stuff in here. I think for me, I wish I could put a finger on a particular scene. Because like I said, I think Terry Farrell is my kind of MVP for this episode. I think her performance is so astute. And I think that's really captured, I think, in the scene where she's saying, I think you should look at someone a little more attainable. And I think you could, it's really the trio of scenes where she's basically telling Worf, but not overtly telling him. She saves that because I think we get a sense of, like you said, whereas most shows would show you like, the majority would be like a jealousy, like a like the very
Right.
predictable woman's jealous and has to like subvert the whole thing to get what she wants.
She's much wiser and more mature.
I think
than that.
she's maybe there's a soupçon of jealousy. I think it's mostly she's playing with her food a little bit, and I think she's
yes, that's 100% right.
Seeing how it plays out, and she's also being a good colleague to Quark, and she is using that to sort of she allows Worf to be a good colleague in pursuit, knowing that she's just kind of leading him along. So I think that's all kind of encapsulated in that scene, and I think that that's such great storytelling because they do all of her storytelling without a lot of it's a lot of showing and demonstrating instead of just telling. Yeah. So it's good stuff.
I think that's a really good way of putting that, her playing with her food. I don't think she ever is really concerned about the Grilka of it all. I think she knows she has Worf right where she wants him. I think it sort of triggers her to like actually reel him in. But yeah, playing with your food is a really fun way of doing that.
And then, I guess if as a wormhole, not a wormhole, but we'll talk about it here because there's no other place. I'll pose this question to you. Do you think, because my read of it is more that it's, because I do think he's into Dax. He has been from the beginning. I think the way they set it up is that the Grilka of it all, I'm sure she is fascinating, whatnot, but he doesn't know her, right? I think in his pursuit of trying to figure out still where he sits on the sort of Klingon human spectrum, I think he feels like he should dig Grilka and should pursue her more than he wants to. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like there's so much, and it's a little bit tied to what we were saying about last episode, about there's an element of Klingon fronting that he does because he's trying to like finish stuff. It's like when you're doing a show and like you feel like you're supposed to be hot for the super conventionally attractive person,
or high school,
you kind of in high school, but really you're really much more connecting with the weirdo.
Yeah.
That you should actually be with, but like, we all have to think that Tina's hot. But
and what social rot will I bring upon myself if I express that I like the clarinet chick? You know what I mean? Right.
I want to be with the nerd who is exactly. I think that's exactly right. So for me, my best moment is Armin's performance in the final scene, both with his sort of his battle work, his mime work, his ability to sell the sort of BS speech that he has to give, his excitement about his like, and him having to make decisions in real time. What is Worf forcing me to do? What am I supposed to do here? Oh, let me pull the thing. Just like all of the A to B to C of the intentions that he is playing, but the mixture of the physical and the act. I think he just gives a phenomenal performance of like really well articulated little beats, constantly changing. I think Armin gives a phenomenal performance in that final scene. So that would be my best moment. We got to hand out some things, Mike.
You get some stamps. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stamps.
2, 3, 4, 5.
2, 3, 4, 5. Right.
come along this journey with me, friends, because I
Okay.
still don't know where I fall on this whole episode. Let's start with plot A. I love plot A. I think it works. I think it's well thought out. I think
The Quark
yes.
Grilka thing. Yeah.
Insert Dax and Worf as well. I think it's all party to the same thing, because everything is subverted, right? The Klingons should be the strong characters, right? That's sort of what we know of Klingons, and yet Dax, as we said, is totally one step ahead the whole time, right? She is sort of, like we said, playing with our food. She's having a good time with it. At no time does she play this sort of jilted lover, and it's just
She's never weak.
yeah,
Ever.
and there's such a confidence there, and that confidence isn't played based on beauty, which is the trap you can fall in with Terry Farrell, right? It's based on, she knows that she's got something with him. She knows what she brings to the table. She brings up her quippiness and her sort of her affectation of fun, and it's just great to watch. And it's such an empowering episode for Dax, I think.
Yeah.
Also for Quark, like I said, everything is subverted. He never plays it like the goofy dodo who's being he's never actually being puppeted in this episode, right? And it and even though we see that sort of mechanism at the end, every time he's fed a piece of advice, they never show that scene, right? They never show him going back to Grilka and miming word for word like Cyrano, right? The whole thing of Cyrano is that it's fake because the person is just puppeting the words and thus earning the love and affection for someone else. But that's not what's happening here, which is, I think, is such a great turn of its head. It is Quark, and Quark is bringing his own sort of, I think Quark is learning that he doesn't need the Cyrano, which is a different story.
And he's getting information more than is being puppeted.
And so there's a confidence in him that is awesome. There's a game in him that we've seen before, but here it's played straight. It's not played for laughs at all. In fact, even that last scene where he's being puppeted, nothing's really being played for laughs. Yes, the speechifying thing sort of, but whereas this in the first 10 minutes I thought was just like a comedic episode. And it is, and I think it is sort of a one-off. It's not first couple episodes we've been about the big conflict, but it's not really that.
Right.
We mention it, but so all of that really works for me. With one sort of caveat that I'll come back to.
Okay.
The O'Brien Kira thing. So I think for me personally, the reason I'm not anti the story, because especially as I get older, right? When you're younger, I'll use just an analogy from the business we're in. When you're younger, you see showmances all the time, right? Oh, well, I'm a lead, this person's a lead, and sort of like you fall in love with them, right? It's kind of the thing. And that
happens over and over.
That's sort of what's happening here, right? In a way. The difference being, as you get older and you reckon, oh, people are married, or there's this, there's that, you recognize that you don't actually have these feelings for that person, right? Those types of feelings. Or maybe they could develop, like she said, in another world, right? In another life. Like, and I think that as I've matured, right, one thing about relationships is they are a choice in a lot of ways, right? You're committing monogamous relationships. You're committing to this experience, and that's not to say that there's no other human being you would ever be attracted to or a relationship path that could happen. There are a cornucopia of possibilities. And there's a bittersweetness to that at times, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that, that you make a choice not to pursue that because you are happy with your current relationship, whatever it might be.
Right.
For me, though, there's just we've never seen any sort of romantic chemistry between those two characters. And I just don't feel it or see it, right? There's such a not that relationship that it feels shticky. And they don't help that along by all the way up into that last scene, which I think the last scene of it has the most pathos, has the most grounding, has the most actual something to say as to the human experience, and something many of us, especially as you get older, have in some way can relate to. But they shtickify it the whole way up to it, right? And it's weird to me, if we're going to play this monogamously, it's weird to me that Keiko is so oblivious because she's not dumb and she's putting him in the situation The failure, aside from, so that's my kind of conflict of it. Yes, 90s, where I think an opportunity is missed because look, I'm not even being hornball here. They overtly reference in a very 90s way, sort of BDSM type aggression-based consensual sexuality, right?
Sure, yeah.
Which I'm not versed in, so I apologize. I won't even get into like nomenclature or whatnot, but it's clear that that's sort of how the Klingons do go about things, right?
Yeah, no doubt, yeah.
And there ain't nothing wrong with that. I like that it's played a little jokey. I mean, it's played a lot jokey, but there's nothing. It is what it is. I mean, it's accepted. Everybody is aware of it, and it's cool.
Their attitude is, as long as it's consensual with both parties, go nuts.
And I think that's so refreshing to see.
Yeah,
I wish they had leaned into the sort of polyamory of it all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, hey, you know what? Keiko's kind of into this thing I'm seeing, and maybe there's something happening. And what if we could destigmatize that while we're at it? Why not?
I mean, sure, and maybe if it were done today, I think 90s were not ready for that.
Yeah, no,
idea.
you're right. I get that. I know I'm fanficking.
Nowhere near ready for that idea.
I'm fanficking here, but in the absence of that, it forces it into a sort of a comedic area that I think belies the serious, confusing human experience that I think many of us have experienced in life, where you're like, oh, especially with friends, where you're in a moment, regardless of a relationship, right? Like if you're in a relationship or not, or you're single or whatever, you're having some drinks, you're having a conversation, and you see a friend for a fraction of a second in a light that you hadn't seen before. And you think, and you both have that moment where you're like, huh. But you recognize, oh, if we even pursue that in a half a percentage, we're going to obliterate this awesome friendship we've built over years. We're just going to drop an atom bomb. And so you make the decision, hopefully, if you're smart. I've been on both sides of it.
I mean, I married her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess you can speak to this a little better.
And then got divorced.
Yeah,
so.
you can speak to it a little better. Yeah, I've had some friendships that you then go that direction and then you don't get the friendship back. If you're lucky, maybe you do. And sometimes I guess it works out for a little while. And then doesn't. So anyway, my point is I think that they sort of cut it off at the knees by making it so jokey and will they, won't they, Will and Gracie in the beginning. That all said, the strength of the A plot and machinations of such, and the fact that they were able to subvert my expectations so often in this episode, character-wise and plot-wise, it ends up being much higher of a score. I thought it was going to be low 80s. I think I'm actually getting a much higher than that. I'm going to go 87 stem bolts. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. I just want to get back to the big plot. That's just where I'm at right now. But I like this episode, 87.
Well, look, you gotta have a mixture of things, otherwise you're discovering. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I find this episode charming.
Yeah, delightful.
I find this episode delightful. I like the little pieces of sci-fi that we have with the tech for the Cyrano stuff. I like that the characters feel like our characters. I like the progression of the relationships. I mean, obviously, Grilka's not going to be back next week, but, the Worf and Dax thing, we'll see where that goes. And I really like that part of it. I think it's a very enjoyable, satisfying episode to watch. And the Quark Grilka arc in these two episodes, I think it's great. I think it's done a lot for Quark.
Do you think as a writer, if you made another pass at this, do you like the fiscal MacGuffin that brings her to the station initially?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That's what he provided for her in the first episode. That is how he justified his existence, how he earned her respect. She needed a pretense to go back. I think she might have actually planned on seeing what Quark was up to, and this might have been just a reason for it. But if it were a shoot and not kayfabe, then he is who she can trust to help her with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I like a little column A, a little column B, actually.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's probably a little bit of both. So I think it's great. You know, obviously the Worf Dax has been set up for a season and a half. You could tell that it was going to go there, and it's awesome. I'm excited for it. I definitely ship Worf and Dax, right? Awesome. The Kira O'Brien thing is, I think, the most interesting thing to talk about, and I think what we're all the only part about it that feels a little hinky is it's an odd pairing, right? Kira and O'Brien's an odd pairing. You know, he's older. You know, she's this hot young thing, and he's more like me. And like from his perspective, yeah, I totally get it. You know, from hers, I don't know, but also like he's providing a lot for her. So, but I do think it's a very human thing, and I think it is one of the most human-y beats here. That's not like sci-fi. It's not TV. It's more like, man, we've all been there, and you have to sort of make that decision, and how do you make that decision with the other person directly without coming out necessarily saying that that's what you're doing. And so because you start with like, oh, I'm developing a crush on someone inappropriate, then you realize they do too, and then when you have that talk, and then you agree to nope, hard nope on this, even though you're both interested. I thought that was very interesting. I think it would have felt a little bit. You know what the problem is, that because it's Kira and O'Brien, and we know and we love these people and their relationships, it feels a little like incestuous or weird. It just feels a little hinky.
They sort of play it that way, right? They sort of play it a little like brother sister.
It's like, oh, this feels ew. This doesn't feel right to me because I'm invested in all these other things. But that's the story. That's the whole thing. Of course it feels weird, and of course it's it's supposed to feel weird. They also
cake and eat it too a little bit, don't you think? Because clearly Bashir's like, what's up? Clearly Odo's like, what's up? But then Keiko, who is very bright, very in tune to this whole situation, is oblivious?
Or
that lets them
or is she okay with it?
It just avoids that color of the story that is more difficult to tell, is what it is.
Absolutely. It is convenient, but also, like, do you really want an episode where Keiko's all like jealous, and then it throws? I don't want that episode.
Actually, you know what? I retract that, because there's a maturity to it. Like, just to play it out. Like, if Jen is in a show where she's, with what's the dude from Bridges of Madison Square County? Or
Madison Square County.
Eric. Let's say she's in a show with Eric. Right? Sorry, throw it.
Yeah, you mean Stephen Pasquale is what you're looking for.
And like, they're a little flirty flirt, and they're like going with like, I'm not. It's Jen, right? She's gonna do her work, and it's gonna be you let it. You trust. That's part of being in a partnership. Yeah. So I like it.
No, for sure, and they have a mature relationship, and her trust is well founded.
Did you love that? My go-tos for attractive musical theater men are Stephen Pasquale and your brother-in-law.
And my brother-in-law? It's just weird.
That's my list.
Do you want to make out with my brother-in-law?
That's my Mount Rushmore, baby. I'd do it.
There it is. And that's been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. All right. Well, anyway, long story long. I really like this episode. It's fun. I think that I overcome my discomfort with Kira and O'Brien, because you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to. So it gets 90 self-sealing stem bolts from me. I always look forward to it. It's a delight every time I see it. You know who is a delight every time I see it? It is our patrons, who you can join at patreon.com/K&M. You can come and join and get all sorts of extra bonus awkwardness from the two of us. You want more. If you were wondering, what did IMDb think about this episode? it gets a 7.6, which makes it 75 out of 173 episodes. Next week, we are discussing Nor the Battle to the Strong. That will be an interesting discussion for sure. So we will see you back right here next week. Thank you for being patient with us, dropping this a little bit late. We will see you back later. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM. All right, here we go.
Okay.
I'm controlling Mike. How quick till my finger goes up my nose?
Oh no.
That was terrible.